Hey, Paul! Have Tiffany bear a child for you. At a family gathering, Kevin, the father-in-law, suggests this brilliant idea to Paul, the brother-in-law. What is this man saying? The terrifying nature of his words makes my throat tighten. Paul, you are accomplished, but you can't seem to find a good wife. In that case, Andrew's wife will do. How about it? If you get pregnant with Paul's son, we'll elevate your family's status. Kevin looks at me with a nasty grin but with serious eyes, making my limbs go cold. Yet Andrew, my husband, says nothing, just gives an awkward smile. I am Tiffany. I'm a 29-year-old preschool teacher. I've been working in the field since graduating from junior college, and as someone in my 20s, I've started being relied upon by others more and more. The kids are full of energy, and there's always a lot of shouting, so my throat is always sore. I need throat lozenges year-round, whether it's summer or winter. Still, I love the children, and I have a decent relationship with the parents and my colleagues. I find this job rewarding. But there's one regret I have about choosing this profession. It's that there's hardly any opportunity to meet men. I became a preschool teacher because I love kids and always wanted some of my own. But at this workplace, unless friends introduce me to someone, there's no chance to meet men. Even if I do meet someone, they have too many idealistic expectations about what a preschool teacher should be. My ex-boyfriend once said, "When we get married, you'll handle all the childcare, right?" Without hesitation. Having seen many working moms, I knew exactly what kind of man he was, and I knew what to expect if I chose him. So, as I kept failing to find a suitable partner, I found myself nearing 30. I feared I might never get married at this rate. It was around this time I met Andrew. Andrew is 3 years older than me and works as an auto mechanic. Like me, he found it hard to meet women, and we met through a mutual friend. He is as kind as all our friends said. He doesn't talk much, but he's always smiling, and just being around him lightens the mood. He's handsome and tall. Of course, he's had girlfriends before, but they left him because he was too nice. A kind and gentle person is perfect for a spouse. With our friends' encouragement, we started dating quickly. His kindness healed my tired body and soul from work, and it didn't take long for me to want to marry him. He also said he loved my cheerful and positive nature, and on our 1-year anniversary, he proposed with a small diamond ring. Of course, I said yes without hesitation. My parents were overjoyed that I finally found a good man, and I thought the wedding plans would go smoothly. But then, dark clouds began to form. His parents opposed our marriage. The reason was my age. I turned 30 right after accepting his proposal, but his parents-in-law wanted a daughter-in-law under 25. Their reason was they wanted lots of grandchildren, which I understand. But Andrew is 33, so expecting him to bring home a woman 10 years younger is unreasonable. Even though I'm 30, I'm still younger than him. With these mixed feelings, I headed to the in-laws' house in a small rural town for an introduction. To my surprise, not only were his parents-in-law there, but also his grandpa, his uncle Mark, and Mark's wife Rachel. As I froze in shock, they scrutinized me from head to toe. "She's not as sophisticated as I'd expect from a city girl." "Well, for her age, her skin looks good." "I'd prefer someone flashier. Simple girls are pure." What are these people? Their free comments about me went beyond anger to fear. I looked to Andrew for help, but he only furrowed his brows in discomfort. The scrutiny session ended with Kevin's summary. "She's older than expected, but she looks like she can bear many children, so I'll approve." On the drive home, Andrew apologized profusely. "I'm sorry, really sorry. They were worried I'd been deceived in the city." "Deceived? By who?" It makes sense for college students, but Andrew is 33 and has been living on his own for over 10 years. And when they say city, they're not talking about New York or Los Angeles. Yes, it's more developed than their rural area, but still. His parents' views and attitudes seemed stuck in a bygone era. The thought of becoming family with these people terrified me. I'm starting to feel uneasy about marrying you. Don't say that. I swear I'll protect you. Andrew pleaded desperately, holding me back. I love and trust him. But his inability to stand up to his parents then lingered in my mind. Despite these worries, wedding preparations moved forward. The moments of picking out my dress with Andrew and planning the wedding were incredibly happy. However, Kevin kept interfering with our guest list and gifts, insisting, "Invite the local dignitaries and make the gifts more luxurious." Each time, I felt more and more depressed, and he would just keep apologizing, saying, "I'm sorry." My anxiety about the marriage grew, and I nervously asked, "You're not thinking of living with your parents, right?" Andrew shook his head. "No way. Paul will inherit the family home and farmland, and I love my job." Really? Really? Given his parents' mindset, it wasn't surprising they expected Paul to take over. Andrew's workplace was far away, so as long as I could tolerate visiting for Christmas and New Year's, it should be fine. But Paul was also a bit creepy. When we visited his parents' house, he showed up for a bit but disappeared into his room right after seeing me. And as we were getting into the car to leave, I noticed Paul watching us from a second-floor window, which sent chills down my spine. According to Andrew, Paul had lived in their parents' house his whole life and had never been married, now at 38. He helped with the farming, but that was about it. He rarely left the house and spent most of his time in his room doing who knows what. His parents were desperately searching for a wife for him, but women fled at the sight of unkempt Paul. That's probably why his parents had high hopes for Andrew to have kids. So, I was caught in the middle. Could I really marry him? Watching Andrew eagerly preparing for the wedding and looking for a new home, I found myself lost in thought. Friends said I'd never find someone as good as Andrew, and I felt like I'd be the bad guy if I wanted to call off the wedding because of his parents. Indeed, Andrew was the perfect husband if it weren't for his parents. I could endure 2 hellish visits a year. I told myself this and tried to ignore my growing anxiety. The wedding, despite the interference from his parents, went off without a hitch. Starting our newlywed life in our new home was smooth, and seeing Andrew every day without having to arrange a meeting was pure joy. Marrying him was the right choice. The first 6 months flew by, and we reached our first Christmas as a married couple. "Is it okay if we spend a week at my parents' home starting December 23rd? "What?" Andrew casually brought up the visit as if it was a given, and I couldn't help but raise my voice. I had mentally prepared for it, but part of me had hoped he would say we didn't have to go. Andrew had to know how uneasy I felt about his parents' house. Not going for our first Christmas as a married couple seemed impossible. But a week was way too long. I can't do a whole week." "What?" "But Mom wants us to be there to help with the Christmas preparations and cleanup." "That might be, but I have work too." After much reluctance, I managed to convince Andrew to settle for a 4-day, 3-night stay. Even that felt too long. I didn't want to spend even a single day there. "Andrew, promise you'll always be on my side if anything happens." "Of course. You'll always come first for me." Andrew's large hand gently patted my head. I wanted to believe in his warmth, but the anxiety wouldn't leave my mind. So, we headed to his parents' house for our first Christmas as a married couple. 3 nights and 4 days of what felt like the longest, most hellish experience of my life were about to begin. We drove for 5 hours, taking turns at the wheel. Feeling dizzy from the journey, I stepped out of the car and rang the doorbell of his parents' house. As if waiting, the door opened, and Megan, my mother-in-law, appeared. "You're late. Hurry up and change." "What?" "Oh, okay." Without even a proper greeting, Megan pushed me into a small room. I put on the apron I brought and headed to the living room, where Megan handed me a broom and a rag. "Everyone's coming this evening, so start cleaning up." "What? Clean where?" "Everywhere, obviously. If you don't hurry, you won't finish in time." "Oh, okay." Overwhelmed by Megan's intensity, I took the cleaning supplies. Everywhere? This was only my second visit to their house, and I had only used the living room before. Even so, I could tell this old, large house was more than twice the size of my parents' home. The long hallway, filled with hair and dust, was daunting. Megan seemed to be in the kitchen, preparing food. I started cleaning, but using a broom and a rag in an unfamiliar place was exhausting since I usually used a vacuum cleaner. Meanwhile, Andrew was in our assigned room, making the bed and seemingly enjoying a nap. Seeing him relax while I struggled made me quite frustrated. "Hey, could you help me a bit?" I'm tired from driving. Let me rest a bit." "But I drove too." "But if I help, Mom will scold you, Tiffany. She's already upset that we're only staying for 3 nights. Andrew rolled over and started snoring again. "What? Is this my fault?" I felt disheartened by his selfish words. But arguing would waste time. Frustrated, I decided to let Andrew take over in the evening and return to cleaning. Once I finished cleaning, Andrew's relatives started arriving. I was then called to the kitchen, where Megan ordered me. "Make soup with those ingredients." I like cooking, so it wasn't a burden. But I didn't have the experience to immediately prep and cook in an unfamiliar kitchen. "Where are the knife and cutting board?" "Find them yourself." Megan didn't tell me anything when I asked. As I opened various cabinets, she snapped. "You're in the way, slowpoke." Rachel appeared in the kitchen, and seeing me search for a blender, she sneered. "City folks are useless, aren't they?" "You're the ones who can't give proper instructions." I held back the retort and apologized. "I'm sorry." Meanwhile, Andrew was drinking with Kevin and the male relatives, getting drunk. Even when I served the dishes, he didn't make eye contact. I was told wives eat the leftovers from the big dishes, so after cleaning up the messy table from the late-night drinking, I ate the leftovers. When I returned to our room after showering, he was already asleep. Too exhausted to be angry, I collapsed onto the bed and fell asleep instantly. At 4 a.m., Megan woke me up to do laundry and prepare breakfast for 12 people. Megan didn't just delegate chores to me, she did some herself, but in between, she would berate me to relieve her stress. And in the evening, it was time for the men's drinking session again. Andrew was too drunk to be of any help. After breakfast on the 3rd day, I reached my limit with his incompetence. "You said you'd protect me, right?" Andrew panicked at my anger. "If you won't protect me, I'm leaving. Give me the car keys." "Wait, it's just one more day. We'll leave tomorrow, so please hang in there." "No." "Okay, I'll tell them so you can relax today." "If you break your promise, I won't forgive you." "Okay." Andrew nodded desperately, and I sighed. I didn't have the energy or confidence to drive 5 hours back alone, so I decided to trust Andrew's words one more time. Andrew told Kevin and Megan, "We're going sightseeing." He took my hand and we left his parents' house as if escaping. I thought he should have confronted them, but even a short break from that house lifted my spirits. When we returned, Megan dragged me into the kitchen with a terrifying expression, but I decided to help her and Rachel prepare dinner for 12. Then I heard someone from the living room calling, "Tiffany!" I brought the food and was forcibly seated by Andrew's uncle, Mark. "You're leaving tomorrow, right? It's sad, so let's drink together tonight." Mark, with a red face and reeking of alcohol, pushed a beer towards me. I glanced at Andrew, who also had a red face and was smiling at me. I feel bad for Megan and Rachel. I tried to excuse myself politely, but Mark insisted. "No way. When an elder offers you a drink, you have to accept." I'm not a lightweight, but the alcohol hit my tired body hard, making my head spin. Mark looked me up and down and gave a lewd smile. "You are really cute. Are all city girls this cute?"
Thank you."
"Mark, don't be fooled. She's already 30, not that young." Kevin's unnecessary comment made the men laugh. I didn't find it funny at all. "You're lucky you married Andrew." Mark seemed genuinely happy for me, and I forced a smile. Then Kevin, with a nasty grin, asked me, "So, how's it going? What? Are you making babies?" The blunt question left me speechless. The other men also grinned lewdly at me. I looked at Andrew, but he just smiled awkwardly. Do they expect me to answer? They're the worst.
Children are a blessing.
I tried to evade the question, but of course, the drunk Mark and Kevin wouldn't let it go. "At your age, you can't afford to be so relaxed. You need to be more proactive. Maybe Andrew doesn't know how to make a baby?" "If that's the case, ask Paul. He's always been better at everything." "What?" The outrageous suggestion left the room in stunned silence. Paul, who had been quietly drinking in the corner, raised his head slowly. "What?" From behind his long bangs, his sharp eyes pierced through me. Ignoring my frozen state, Kevin shouted, "Hey Paul, have Tiffany bear a child for you." He said this cheerfully, as if it were a brilliant idea. What is this man saying? The terrifying suggestion made my throat tighten. Paul's eyes widened for a moment, then he glared at Kevin with an irritated voice. "What? Paul is accomplished but can't seem to find a good wife. In that case, Tiffany will do. How about it? If she gets pregnant with Paul's child, we'll elevate her family's status." "What are you talking about?" Kevin looked at me with a serious expression despite his laugh, making my limbs go cold. Andrew said nothing, just gave an awkward smile. "Or maybe I should teach you how to make a baby first. I'm better at it than Paul and Andrew, I've got the track record." What's so funny? What's so enjoyable about this? They're the worst. Even as a joke, it's too much. Kevin and Mark laughed without anyone stopping them, but what I couldn't forgive was Andrew laughing along with them without standing up for me. I swore never to come here again. Ignoring Kevin's vulgar remarks and Megan's petty harassment, I cleaned up the kitchen and hurried to my room. Andrew was nowhere to be found, which annoyed me even more. He probably ran off because he was scared of my anger. This is the worst. I wanted to leave immediately, but I had drunk too much to drive. So, I packed my bags to leave first thing in the morning. As I stepped out of the room to take a shower, the door to the next room suddenly opened, and I was forcefully pulled inside. "What?" I screamed in surprise, only to have a large hand cover my mouth.
"Quiet."
The man's voice whispered in my ear, heightening my fear. Scared, scared, scared. I remembered Kevin's vulgar talk, and my heart pounded loudly. Then the man spoke softly.
"Dad and the others are planning to offer you as a sacrifice to me. You need to escape this house now."
"What?" Surprised by the unexpected words, I slowly turned my head. There stood Paul, looking angry. Paul, realizing I had calmed down, slowly released his grip.
I'm sorry for being rough. I thought this was the only way you'd listen.
Paul's eyes were still hidden behind his long bangs, making it hard to read his expression. But his voice was filled with sadness and anger.
A sacrifice? Didn't you hear them? They want you to bear my child. They're serious.
What? The horrifying truth drained the blood from my face.
They think I, as the eldest son, should be prioritized. My remaining single is bad for their reputation.
So,
they want me to make a child with you and marry you.
It's disgusting. He spat out in disgust.
Andrew is also crazy. He's following Dad's orders and doesn't protect you just to please him.
No way! Paul awkwardly informed my pale face.
He went to the pub with Dad. They did it to make it easier for me to approach you.
No way. I already knew from this visit that Andrew was spineless and always tried to please his parents. But I never imagined he'd allow something so inhumane. I married him believing in his I love you words, only to be offered as a sacrifice to appease his parents. I was about to faint from the shock when Paul shook my shoulders to bring me back to my senses.
Right now, only Mom and the drunken relatives are here. You need to escape.
But I've been drinking.
I've prepared an escape route. Let's go.
I took my belongings and, following Paul's lead, climbed out of his room window. A short distance from the in-laws' house, we reached a home where a woman, supposedly his friend, was waiting with a car. It seemed he had contacted her in advance. This woman was furious about the situation as if it were her own and drove me to a major station. She spoke to the night bus driver, and luckily, I was able to get a last-minute seat. Riding the night bus for the first time since college, I watched the city lights pass by outside the window. I was saved. Realizing this, my body finally relaxed, and tears streamed down my face. Coincidentally, the bus's destination was not near my current home but the closest station to my parents' house. Arriving at 5 a.m., I called my mom from the terminal. Surprised by the early morning call, she rushed to pick me up after hearing my story. When I got home, Dad's face was filled with rage, and we immediately went to retrieve my belongings from the house I shared with Andrew. A divorce was inevitable. While Mom helped me pack, the noise at the front door grew louder.
Bring out Tiffany! She needs to be disciplined. Hey! You're the one who should be disciplined. I'll call the police.
Their roars echoed through the apartment hallway. Remembering the events of the previous night, my fingers went cold. But summoning my courage, I went to the front door. There stood a red-faced Kevin, an expressionless Megan, and a tearful Andrew hiding behind them. Seeing my face, Kevin's voice grew even louder.
Hey, how dare you leave without permission? You know why I left, right? You're here because you have a guilty conscience. No, we're here to fix your rude behavior. Then, shall I take this to the police?
What? I held up my mobile phone to Kevin's angry face and pressed the play button on the voice recorder app. The conversation from last night between Kevin, Paul, and Andrew was recorded clearly. Kevin was pressuring Paul to have a child with me, a terrifying proposal. Paul neither agreed nor disagreed, but asked Andrew, "Are you sure with this?" And Andrew replied, "If Dad says so, so I have no choice then." When Paul forwarded this recording to me, I was so shocked I almost threw up. Kevin, Megan, and Andrew's faces turned pale as they realized Paul had betrayed them and left such evidence. In contrast, Dad's face turned a furious red, his eyes bulging.
You bastards!
Dad lunged at Kevin, who stumbled back in fear. I held Dad back and calmly told the stunned Andrew,
"Leave.
But
We'll discuss the divorce with a lawyer. If you don't want me to take this to the police, leave now."
Tiffany. Andrew, his face pale, looked between me and Kevin. But, frightened by Dad's terrifying glare, he dragged the paralyzed Kevin out of the apartment. 2 weeks later, Andrew and I had a meeting with a lawyer to discuss the divorce. When I threatened to go to the police if he brought his parents, Andrew came alone. Andrew kept looking at me, hoping I would forgive him. Of course, I had no intention of forgiving him, so the divorce proceedings went smoothly. In the end, I received some compensation from the divorce settlement and signed the divorce papers in front of the lawyer. As we left the lawyer's office, Andrew was sent away first, and I waited for a while before being escorted out the back door by the lawyer. The lawyer had advised that the in-laws might be lying in wait. Sure enough, there was an unusual car parked in front of the lawyer's office, and I went home with Dad, who had been waiting at the back. Thus, my marriage ended abruptly, or so I thought. 6 months after the divorce, I was heading to the nearest station to meet a friend after work. There, unexpectedly, stood Andrew. Why? Fear gripped me, but I realized I was meeting a mutual friend of Andrew's today. Andrew, with his good public persona, must have convinced our friend to cooperate out of sympathy. I had told my friends that the divorce was because I didn't get along with his parents, avoiding the painful details. That was a mistake.
"Tiffany."
Andrew's eyes lit up when he saw me. My face remained expressionless.
"What do you want? We're married, we don't need a reason to see each other."
He smiled sheepishly. I didn't understand and felt only a chill. "We're divorced."
"That was just the lawyer's decision. I asked the lawyer for the divorce."
"Tiffany." Andrew looked at me sadly. Then, as if making up his mind, he bowed deeply. "I'm sorry for my parents. They're old-fashioned and only care about Paul. I couldn't go against them." Sigh.
"But it's wrong for us to be apart when we love each other." "You think so too, don't you?" "Not at all." "What? You seem to be misunderstanding. I divorced because of you, not Kevin and Megan." "What?"
I was surprised that he was genuinely shocked. He really didn't understand anything.
"I don't love someone who stood by silently while Kevin and Megan mistreated and insulted me. And then you allowed Paul to have a child with me? Are you insane?" "But no matter what kind of people Kevin and Megan are, I could have endured if you had protected me. But you laughed while they treated me as a sacrifice. You're not even human to me. Comparing you to insects would be an insult to insects."
Ugh.
"I hate you. I despise you. I'm so relieved we're separated."
No way. Finally understanding that I had no affection for him, Andrew collapsed to his knees. I called my friend and calmly explained the situation. The friend, pale-faced, apologized and took him away. This friend explained the circumstances to others, and Andrew's reputation, once seen as a good person, plummeted. His decent friends distanced themselves. With no one left around him, Andrew became reclusive and only left the house for work. Of course, no matter how much his parents urged him, he never brought another woman to their house. 6 years later.
"Mom, I'm hungry."
"Okay, I'm preparing it now, just a moment." At 36, I live in a small house in a residential area, spending my days taking care of my 1-year-old daughter. After separating from Andrew, I thought I'd never get married again. But 3 years ago, I reconnected with a high school classmate at a reunion. And we hit it off, leading to our marriage. My new husband's parents are sensible people who welcome us with our favorite meals when we visit. Paul also fled to a place far from the in-laws' house, and now lives peacefully with a partner he met there. Paul had always been concerned for my safety and kept in touch, but now he feels like a real brother, and we occasionally share updates. Andrew remains reclusive, and Kevin and Megan will never get to hold a grandchild. But there's no point in gloating over that. Instead, watching my child grow is much more fulfilling.
Hold me. Let's hold you.
I wipe the pumpkin off my daughter's mouth and lift her small, soft body into my arms. As I inhale the gentle baby scent from her hair, I feel deeply grateful for the happiness I now have in my life. The day finally arrived, and Kevin and his wife walked in, their faces clearly stiff with forced smiles.
Hi, Dad, Mom, it's been a while.
Alex, nice to meet you.
And congratulations on your silver wedding anniversary.
Welcome, I'm so glad you both could come to celebrate with us today. I replied cheerfully, trying to help them relax.
I was excited to prepare a special meal for you too, since you came all this way. What? You cooked, Dad? Well, I'm not used to it, so everything's not quite ready yet.
Kevin took a seat, still a bit confused but trying to accept Alex's hospitality, while Lisa headed to the kitchen where Alex was. If you're still in the middle of cooking, please let me help. As I wiped the table, I could feel the lively atmosphere that came from having the whole family together.
All right, the food is ready. Shall we make a toast?
Alex said, flashing his biggest smile yet and holding out a glass to me.
I'd like to ask Kate, who's worked the hardest, to give the toast.
I was touched by Alex's thoughtfulness and took the glass. My heart pounded as I slowly raised my glass and took a deep breath.
May this happiness last forever.
Suddenly, in the middle of my sentence, Lisa grabbed my hand forcefully and dashed towards the front door.
We need to get out of here, now.
I was confused but had no choice but to follow, as Lisa's grip was so strong and desperate. After running out of the house for a while, we ducked into a cafe that came into view. Catching my breath, I felt relieved to finally stop, having frantically tried to keep up with Lisa.
I'm sorry for the abruptness, but I had to do this,
Lisa explained, her face pale and shaking.
Alex, congrats on your long teaching career,
I said, giving my husband, who is 5 years older than me, some words of appreciation. Alex had retired this spring after working as a high school teacher for over 30 years. Yeah, he replied in his usual curt manner. Relieved that he at least responded, I went back to the bedroom. A dusty photo displayed on the dresser caught my eye. It was a memorable shot of Alex and me from our wedding day. We both looked so happy, and I couldn't help but sigh. If only we could go back to those days. When we first got married, Alex was so kind. He showered me with words of gratitude and appreciation every day and ate my home-cooked meals with relish. He always accompanied me on shopping trips, carried even small bags for me, and was always attentive to my health. But as our married life went on, he gradually started criticizing my housework. At first, it was little things like telling me to make the boiled eggs medium or to vacuum every day. It was all stuff he never mentioned in our newlywed days, so I was taken aback. But I happily obliged, thinking he was finally opening up to me. However, as the months passed, Alex's criticisms increased. By the time our son Kevin was in elementary school, Alex would harshly scold me over the smallest things that displeased him and treated Kevin with the same strictness.
If you have time to play, then study. You're a boy, so don't cry no matter what happens.
He demanded high academic performance from Kevin, who was still just a grade schooler, and would yell at him terribly if he wasn't at the top of his class. This invisible violence steadily eroded our family. Alex just kept on reprimanding, remaining utterly indifferent to household matters. By the time Kevin reached middle school, Alex's abuse was no longer just verbal.
Why'd you only get a score like this?
Apparently, Kevin had made just one mistake on his test. Unable to contain his anger, Alex crumpled up the test on the desk and tore it to shreds.
Having the top grades in his grade is incredible, isn't it? It's meaningless if it's not perfect. Why did you get this one question wrong?
I tentatively spoke up, hoping Alex would recognize how hard Kevin was trying.
Everyone makes mistakes sometimes. It's because you coddle him like that, Kate. It's your fault I'm being humiliated.
Alex raised his voice and finally turned violent towards me. All I could do was endure it until his rage subsided.
I'm sorry. I'm so sorry.
I repeated over and over, telling myself to hang on until Alex calmed down. As long as Alex is satisfied here, he probably won't lay a hand on Kevin. To protect Kevin, I gritted my teeth again and again. Even when Kevin got to high school, Alex didn't change.
What the hell are you doing? Aren't you frustrated that Kevin lost?
That day, I was being blamed because Kevin, who had joined the soccer team, lost his match.
It was Kevin's first game, and he made the starting lineup as a freshman. That in itself is amazing. Don't screw with me. What's the point of becoming a regular if he loses?
With that, Alex slapped me hard across the left cheek. Holding my stinging cheek, I desperately tried to redirect Alex's anger away from Kevin.
I heard the opponent was a top-ranked powerhouse school in the nation. Against a team like that, Kevin scored 2 goals.
If you can score 2 points, you can score 3 points too, can't you? With that, Alex slapped my right cheek with all his might.
If you bring me another embarrassing result, you better be prepared.
Having slapped both my cheeks, Alex left the scene looking satisfied. I promised to myself that no matter what, I wouldn't let Alex hit Kevin. As I cooled my cheeks with ice, I kept telling myself that whenever Kevin's grades or test results were poor, Alex would always beat me. Mom, your face. Kevin ran up to me, looking like he was about to cry.
It's okay, this will heal quickly.
I forced a smile so as not to worry Kevin, but the swelling made it hard to smile properly. It's my fault, isn't it?
No, it's not your fault, Kevin.
But if I had gotten better grades. Please, Mom, stop protecting me. Kevin's plea pained my heart.
It's a parent's job to protect their child.
But I can't bear to see you hurt like this because of me. Kevin clenched his fists and spoke as if squeezing out his voice.
If Alex beats you up and you get all injured, even high school life won't go well.
That may be true, but you only live once. I want you to fully enjoy your high school years. I gently placed my hand on Kevin's shoulder and told him in an admonishing tone. Mom, you only live once too. I'll be fine. Besides, Alex's attitude is only temporary. I'm sure he'll go back to being the kind Alex. I looked Kevin straight in the eye and smiled. I'll try harder not to cause any more trouble. Perhaps sensing my facade, Kevin spoke weakly.
Just enjoy being yourself, Kevin. Leave Alex to me.
Kevin also looked me in the eye and nodded. From then on, Kevin enjoyed his high school life to the fullest, and before I knew it, he was preparing for college entrance exams. Out of concern for me, Kevin tried to choose a university close to home.
Don't worry about Alex.
But what will you do, Mom?
I'll live here with Alex.
Kevin stared at the bruises on my arm with an angry look. Are you sure?
You know I have a weak body, right? I might not be able to handle big changes.
In fact, whenever I went on a trip, I would always get sick. Okay, I understand. Though dissatisfied, Kevin agreed. And so, Kevin successfully got into his first choice school. It was quite far away. Alex complained to Kevin in many ways, but being accepted by a well-known university, even Alex seemed satisfied.
Take care,
Mom. I'll do my best. Kevin, looking like he was about to cry, held my hand tightly and set off. After Kevin went to college, Alex's violence stopped, but his verbal abuse continued.
Another cold?
You're just trying to slack off, aren't you? Don't walk in front of me wearing such tacky clothes. He often complained about my appearance and health, but it was better than physical abuse. Amidst such days, my joy was getting messages from Kevin. He talked about trivial things like the seasons and the town he lived in, but he was always concerned about me. The watermelons are abundant this year and really sweet. I wish you could come and have some, Mom.
I see, I'll come if I'm feeling well.
The air is great too. I think it's the perfect environment for you, Mom.
Thank you for worrying about me.
Thanks to Kevin's frequent messages, I didn't feel lonely and could endure Alex's verbal abuse. Over 4 years passed like that, and Kevin graduated college and married a local woman. I told Lisa about you, Mom, and she said she wants us to live together. Kevin sent me such a message. Lisa was Kevin's wife, and I had heard she was a cheerful, lively woman.
I can't interfere with newlyweds, but I appreciate the thought.
I replied to Kevin and let out a quiet sigh. I believed that someday Alex would return to being a kind husband, so I couldn't go to Kevin. It'll be all right. I'm sure it'll be fine. I chanted like a spell and endured Alex's abuse.
Hey, where's my shirt?
Despite my wishes, Alex's angry shouts rained down mercilessly day after day. It's right there.
Not this one. Today's an important day. You expect me to wear this rag?
Alex complained even about a shirt he had only worn 2 or 3 times. But that's the newest shirt.
You're really useless. It's basic etiquette to iron shirts. If it's the same tomorrow, there'll be hell to pay.
Leaving those cold words, Alex left the house. I hurriedly called out "Have a good day" to Alex's retreating back. Alex has expectations of me, so I have to meet them. Suppressing the pain in my heart, I threw myself into housework. I endured Alex's unreasonable demands for several years. Perhaps because retirement was near, Alex seemed a bit calmer these days. The thought of spending more time with Alex from now on made me anxious. Still, I felt pathetic for believing in Alex's kindness and continuing to search for the old Alex. Filled with both anxiety and hope, I stayed away from the living room during the day. I turn on the TV when Alex is in his room. A cooking show featured Alex's favorite dish, deciding tonight's dinner. I turn off the TV and get ready to go shopping. It was a cold day despite being April, so I put on heavy clothes. As I was about to leave, Alex called out from behind.
Wait a minute. I'll come along to help carry things. What?
Surprised by Alex's words, I almost dropped my bag.
It'll be cold if you walk. Let's take the car.
As I watched Alex's actions, I wondered if I was dreaming. Come to think of it, I haven't been yelled at today.
All right, let's go then.
Prompted by Alex, I got in the car. There Alex said something even more surprising.
You can rely on me, you know.
He seemed like a different person from the Alex of yesterday, and I reflexively answered yes. What on earth could have happened? Furthermore, Alex must have noticed me shivering from the cold, as he quietly turned on the heater. Thank you. Alex glanced at me and smiled. It had been decades since I last saw Alex's smile. It caught me so off guard that I averted my gaze in surprise. After 5 minutes of driving, Alex opened his mouth again.
I'm sorry for how I've been. Work stress had built up and I ended up taking it out on the family.
So that's how it was. Being a teacher, he must have been under considerable pressure from many students and their parents. I'm a lousy person. Far from relying on you, I've hurt my precious family. I'm the worst. As I watched Alex looking remorseful, tears naturally welled up in my eyes. The kind Alex I believed in had come back.
Thank you for working so hard for us. I've always known you were a kind person, Alex, and never stopped believing that.
I'm a lucky man to have such a wonderful wife. Alex smiled bashfully and I couldn't help but smile too.
Thank you. Let's keep taking care of each other.
Of course. From that day on, Alex moved as if to make up for lost time. I'm not sure if this makes up for it, but I want to be there for you, Kate. Alex said that with a serious expression, showing concern for my health and taking the lead with housework.
You're already doing plenty. I really appreciate it.
I was glad I had kept believing. Time passed and it was the season again when the sweet osmanthus fragrance wafted in the air. Kevin and his wife decided to come over to celebrate our silver wedding anniversary.
I wonder if it's okay for Lisa to meet Dad.
Kevin was worried about Alex's attitude right up until they arrived.
It's fine. He doesn't even scold me harshly anymore. In fact, he's really kind to me now. Really.
I had visited Kevin and his wife alone before, but this was their first time coming to our house.
If you're that worried, why don't you talk to Alex?
I thought if Kevin heard Alex's words himself, his feelings would change. Hello? Kevin? I handed the phone to Alex and they had an awkward but earnest conversation. Kevin, I'm sorry for everything. Work stress had me on edge and I was too hard on you and Kate. I couldn't see Kevin's face on the other end, but I could tell from Alex's demeanor that some of the tension between them had eased. After exchanging a few more words, Alex hung up the phone looking satisfied.
Since they're coming all this way, I want to host them properly.
Alex and Kevin's relationship was far from good. But I was simply happy that Alex was trying to reach out, even if it was late. Let's have a home party and I'll make all the food myself.
That's a great idea. I'm sure Kevin and Lisa will be delighted.
I'll try making everything from scratch too. I've burdened you for so long, Kate, so just relax. It was an unexpected suggestion. Even though he had started taking the lead with cooking recently, it wouldn't be surprising if he still felt uneasy about it. His proposal filled my heart with gratitude and deep emotion.
In that case, I'll gladly take you up on the offer.
Leave it to me. Getting excited, I started thinking about what else I could do for Kevin and Lisa.
Then I'll handle the cleaning.
I'll be using the kitchen so I can clean that myself. Could you take care of the rest?
Got it.
And so the two of us worked together to prepare for Kevin and Lisa's visit. When the day came, Kevin and Lisa clearly had stiff expressions, their smiles tense.
Dad, Mom, it's been a while.
Alex, nice to meet you. And happy 25th anniversary.
Welcome, I'm so glad you could both come celebrate with us today.
I responded cheerfully, trying to put them at ease.
To think Kevin married such a beautiful woman, you're really grown up.
Alex also greeted Kevin in a friendly manner. Dad. Kevin looked extremely shaken by his father's gentleness, something he had never experienced before. I was eager to prepare a meal for you two who came from afar today.
What? You did, Dad?
But I'm not used to it yet, so it's still not ready.
I can't tell you how many times I cut my fingers.
Alex shrugged and waved his left hand covered in bandages.
Thank you. The thought alone makes me happy.
Though perplexed, Kevin took his seat, accepting Alex's goodwill. Meanwhile, Lisa headed to the kitchen where Alex was.
If you're still in the middle of preparations, please let me help out.
As I wiped the table, I felt the liveliness that comes from having the family gathered. Lisa proactively engaging with Alex naturally brought a smile to Kevin's face. Seeing that made me feel very happy too. All right, the food's ready, so shall we make a toast? Wearing the brightest smile I'd ever seen on him, Alex held out a glass to me. I'd love to hear a toast from Kate, who's been through the most. Moved by Alex's kindness, I accepted the glass. My heart pounding, I slowly raised my glass and took a deep breath.
May this happiness last forever.
Mid-sentence, Lisa suddenly grabbed my hand and pulled me forcefully towards the front door.
We need to leave, now.
I was bewildered, but Lisa's grip was so strong and desperate that I had no choice but to follow her lead. After running a short distance from the house, we entered a cafe that came into view. I caught my breath, feeling relieved that I could finally stop after desperately following Lisa.
I'm sorry for the sudden actions, but I had no choice.
Lisa explained the situation, her face pale.
What?
I could feel the color draining from my face as I listened to her story. According to Lisa, when she tried to carry the glasses to prepare drinks, Alex seemed unusually against it.
I was secretly observing his actions, trying not to let him notice.
After pouring a drink into one of the glasses while being cautious of his surroundings, Alex crushed something and put it in, Lisa said. It was aconite.
Aconite?
Yes. Hiking is my hobby, you see, and mountains can be surprisingly dangerous. Lisa explained while rubbing her arms with both hands.
I've researched the plants that grow in the mountains, including dangerous and inedible ones, so I recognized it immediately.
Even though I had never seen aconite, I knew it was poisonous. I had thought the pretty purple things in the glass were just for decoration, never imagining they were poison. Shuddering at the shocking truth, my thoughts froze from the immense shock. What brought my mind back to reality was a call from Kevin. Mom, are you okay?
Yes, I'm fine. Is Kevin safe?
Somehow. I got a message from Lisa earlier. I'm glad you're safe, Mom. Sighing, Kevin told me what had happened at the house. Dad was in a daze for a while, like he never expected Lisa and Mom to leave. He seemed to have been stunned that I had escaped, not even noticing Kevin was nearby.
Then he suddenly snapped out of it and rushed out of the house in a panic, so he might be looking for you too.
The cafe we were in was located in a maze-like back alley, so it wouldn't be easy to find. But I couldn't shake the uneasy feeling.
Don't worry though. I installed a location tracking app on Dad's mobile phone.
Actually, when Kevin left home, he had gifted us mobile phones so we could contact each other right away.
I put it in as a precaution, but I never thought it would come in handy like this.
Kevin gave a wry smile, looking like he was desperately holding back anger at his father's attempted actions.
So I was able to go into Dad's room and check his computer.
Lisa had asked Kevin to search for any history of aconite purchases. Since I don't usually use computers, Alex must have let his guard down. When Kevin opened the computer, it wasn't even password locked. And on Alex's computer, there was a purchase history for aconite and messages with a woman who seemed to be Alex's mistress, planning to take my life for insurance money. Dad probably turned kind all of a sudden to make Mom let her guard down. Having heard everything, I felt like I had been slapped awake. To think that Alex would. I looked back on Alex's past behavior. It's true that the violence stopped after Kevin left home. Back then, I was so relieved the violence ended that I couldn't think about anything else. He must have started a relationship with his mistress around then, and by the time he started being kind to me, they had likely already hatched their plan. This time, Kevin happened to come celebrate with us and Lisa had knowledge of aconite, but if I had been alone. Looking back, there were many unnatural points. Even with the silver anniversary preparations, Alex was controlling everything in the kitchen. It was all to carry out his plan. Thinking of the worst-case scenario, goosebumps rose all over my body. Kevin, thank you. I'm going to the police.
Got it. Looks like Dad is headed in a completely different direction.
Right. It's now or never. And so Lisa and I decided to go talk to the police.
No matter what, I will protect Kate. You're so reliable, Lisa.
Encouraged by her, my heart strangely calmed down. Lisa's cheerfulness lightened the atmosphere. After that, my divorce from Alex was finalized without issue. The three of us returned home exhausted from the ordeal, but with somewhat refreshed expressions as we looked at each other.
I talked to the lawyer to make sure you get compensation too.
Thank you for everything. Even I no longer had any affection for Alex, rather, I felt relieved like a weight had been lifted. Furthermore, I had been seeing a doctor regularly for the trauma caused by Alex's years of scolding and violence, so Alex ended up in police custody.
Thanks to Kevin, we quickly found out Alex's whereabouts and got alimony paid from his retirement money. I can't thank you two enough.
Seems like the mistress faced repercussions too. The woman who was thought to have spread malicious rumors to Alex had her identity uncovered from Alex's computer and was promptly arrested.
Looks like I can live without worry from now on.
My heart was in tatters from Alex's betrayal after supporting him for so long. But I forced a smile, not wanting to worry Kevin and Lisa. Kate, if you'd like, why don't you come live with us?
I appreciate the offer, but I'll be fine on my own.
I would just be a burden on Lisa too, with my weak health. The last thing I wanted was to trouble Kevin and his wife. We want to protect the Kate who desperately protected Kevin. Saying that, Lisa gave me a strong hug.
Lisa.
I looked over to see Kevin nodding with a gentle expression.
Thank you. I'd feel so much better with you two always by my side.
And so I moved into Kevin's house and started a new life. My health was the only thing I was worried about, but incredibly, I became energetic after moving. Thanks to that, I was able to do things I had given up on and go places I couldn't before. Every day felt fresh. I woke up with the morning sun again today. Opening the window and breathing in the outside air, I was enveloped by the distinctive summer atmosphere. I prepared breakfast and the three of us sat around the dining table. Then, I picked up the mayonnaise.
Mayonnaise is the way to go for omelets,
I declared strongly to Lisa, who was about to put ketchup on her omelet.
No, Kate, it has to be ketchup.
Being able to naturally bicker over trivial things like this, I felt like I had finally grasped true happiness.
You two better eat quickly or we won't be able to go anywhere.
Kevin spoke as if admonishing children. Where are you taking us today?
Want to go to a ranch and have some soft-serve ice cream? Sounds fun. We'll have to be careful about sunburn.
As I felt the love and true family I had finally obtained through their exchange, I vowed in my heart to keep working together from now on.
May this happiness last forever.
I quietly chanted the words I couldn't say that day, my heart dancing with joy. Finally, my sister Whitney has given birth. Our family was overjoyed, and even though it wasn't Christmas, relatives gathered together. The stars of the show were, of course, Whitney and her baby. With food and drinks ready, the party began. After we all toasted, my husband Brad approached Whitney and the baby. Whitney handed the baby to Brad, and he held the baby in his arms. Brad looked at the baby with such a loving gaze, as if he were holding his own child.
"Hello, baby. Oh, you're so cute."
After admiring the baby, he turned to me and said, "If only you could actually have kids." Followed by a sigh.
"Still really cute. Wonder who it looks like."
He insulted me in front of all the relatives, seemingly unaware of the icy atmosphere that followed. In the frozen silence, the family gathered around Brad and Whitney, enclosing them. Whitney and Brad, engrossed with the baby, hadn't noticed until Whitney's husband Chuck spoke up.
"It really doesn't seem to take after me. There are elements of Whitney, though."
He confronted Brad calmly. It seemed Whitney and Brad finally noticed the awkward air. Surrounded by relatives, they looked to be huddling together. "Overall, Brad, it seems to take after you, don't you think?" Donald, Brad's dad, added insult to injury.
"Really now? Brad, it's the spitting image of you when you were little."
His tone was cold, unfitting for the celebration.
Eh?
Seeing Brad taken aback, I couldn't help but let out a smile. Brad had no idea that I had been laying the groundwork with the relatives. I'm Zoe, 42 years old. My life has been nothing extraordinary. Not academically gifted, nor athletically talented. Not the type to stand out, I've probably been forgotten by my classmates, leading a plain life. I have a younger sister, Whitney. Unlike me, Whitney is beautiful and stylish. Though our age difference spared me from blatant comparisons, from what I saw, Whitney was adored by many from a young age. Becoming a show-off in elementary school worked to her advantage, making her a central figure in her class. People gravitated towards her, regardless of gender, and after school, friends were always coming over. As she grew older, perhaps thinking little of my plainness, Whitney would say, "Zoe, you're so plain. Make sure not to show your face when my friends are over." Ignoring me even when her friends weren't around. Confused by Whitney's attitude and feeling uneasy around my own sister, I decided to move out. I had a job lined up and had saved some money from working part-time while attending college. So I moved out without anyone stopping me. It was lonely at times, but being alone was more comfortable than being nagged by Whitney. Occasionally, when I visited home, I heard from Mom that Whitney's behavior seemed to be getting worse year by year. By the time she was in high school, Whitney started going after people's boyfriends. And Mom would come to me for advice. But since I had no experience with love, all I could do was try to console Mom. In the end, Whitney never changed, and Mom's worries never ceased. I became close to a senior coworker while working together on a project. His name was Brad. He was 2 years older than me, someone I had been on the same team with since the last project. I had never been approached by men before, but after the project ended and we all went out for drinks, he asked for my contact information. Even while drinking, I was the sober one, taking care of drunk colleagues and supporting the organizer, which apparently caught his attention.
"How about we go out for dinner, just the two of us?"
Thinking he had asked for my contact for work-related reasons, I was surprised by his sudden invitation. Finding no reason to decline and thinking this would be a one-time thing, I accepted his invitation. However, when we actually sat down to eat and talk, we got along so well that time flew by. Unable to suppress the feeling that I didn't want it to end with just this once, I found myself saying, "May I have the pleasure of inviting you out next time," in a surprising move. Perhaps it was the alcohol talking. I was flustered after saying those words. Brad looked stunned. "Oh no."
I didn't mean that. I'm sorry. I meant for work advice, not that." I didn't have any ulterior motive.
I rushed to explain, wanting to run away from the embarrassment. Then, ulterior motive. You're an interesting person, Zoe. Brad burst out laughing.
I'd be happier if it was with ulterior motives.
Suddenly serious, Brad took my arm. Shall we go to another place? I quietly nodded and followed Brad. I'll never forget that night. Even after we got married, we would laugh about it when recalling that time. My first love at 28 felt embarrassing, but he accepted me and took the lead. With him, my once plain life seemed to blossom into something beautiful. At 28, I finally understood what love was, and I gained confidence. 2 years later, he proposed, and we got married. Me, Zoe, 30 years old. Married at a nice round age. And with a new name, I decided to start a new life. I got along well with Brad's parents, especially Mael, as if we were friends. The common mother-in-law and daughter-in-law conflict was non-existent for us. Whitney, attending our wedding, seemed enraptured by the atmosphere, barely acknowledging me. After the ceremony, as Brad and I were heading to the next venue, Whitney ran up to us.
Zoe! Today's wedding was so beautiful. It makes me want to get married soon too.
Any past resentment seemed gone. Whitney smiled at me.
It's about time I settled down too. Not just any man will do. I'll find the right one and have a wedding that everyone can celebrate.
It seemed our wedding made her crave a normal happiness. Declaring her intention to change, Whitney left. I was stunned by our brief exchange, but wanted to believe in her words of change. If my image had cast a positive light on Whitney, then I was satisfied. Feeling that years of resentment had dissipated made me genuinely happy. I looked forward to having face-to-face conversations in the future. Since my marriage, Mom's worries shifted from Whitney to me. Yes, about children. Getting married at 30, I understood my parents' eagerness to see grandchildren. Of course, I wanted children too. I was working but planned to quit if I had a child. Initially, I hadn't thought deeply about it, but as time went on, I grew tired of Mom's constant nudging. Wanting to respond to my parents' feelings, I began to excessively consult with Brad. Initially, Brad took it lightly, saying, "Don't rush, it'll happen when it's meant to." However, as I repeatedly brought up the same concerns,
"Come on, I'm tired today. Let's not talk about this anymore,"
he started to visibly show his annoyance. 5 years into our marriage, we hadn't had children, and by that time, Brad seemed to have given up. I was 35 before I knew it. Nowadays, it's not uncommon for people older than me to have children. But I knew I was reaching the age where I had to prepare myself. I knew that if we truly wanted children, we would have to undergo the appropriate tests and treatments. And I was aware of how difficult that could be. Brad was saying, even without children, we have the option to enjoy life together. But I couldn't give up. Should we try getting tested, just once? Holding on to a last hope, I asked Brad. Brad was reluctant but agreed to go to the hospital. Perhaps thinking that if a problem was identified with either of us, I would give up. However, Brad's attitude became colder after we went for the tests. When we went back to the hospital to get the results, I understood why Brad was being cold. The issue with not being able to have children was on Brad's side. Unable to accept the test results, perhaps because of his pride, Brad started to take out his frustration on me. Unable to maintain a happy relationship, all I could do was wait for him to calm down. 3 years later, Brad's demeanor had improved compared to back then. But he still came home late or not at all sometimes. By that time, Whitney had finally found someone to marry. It had been 8 years since our wedding, and it seemed she had struggled a lot during that time. Her habit of playing around since her younger days was hard to break. And even when she found someone good, she would quickly lose interest, so relationships didn't last. However, the man Whitney found this time was broad-minded enough to accept all of her past actions. Moreover, we learned at their wedding that Whitney's husband was an elite businessman working for a major trading company. How they met and got to the point of marriage was unclear, but seeing Whitney happy reminded me of my own early marriage days. I hadn't imagined things turning out this way back then. Still, I believed that marrying Brad was my happiness. Even without children, we could still make it as a couple. Watching Whitney in her wedding dress, I reaffirmed my love for Brad in my heart. Realizing that children were not in the cards for Brad and me, Mom shifted her hopes to Whitney. Honestly, I was relieved to no longer be pressured by Mom. Whitney was still in her 20s and likely to meet Mom's expectations. Somewhere inside, I too had hopes for Whitney. 3 years later, the grandchild Mom had been longing for was finally on its way, growing inside Whitney. Mom cried and thanked Whitney when she found out. Hearing this news, I felt like my worries were finally over. It had been such a long journey to this day. My relationship with Brad wasn't great, but I hoped this could be a turning point. We hadn't spoken much lately. Whenever he did open his mouth, it was only to make snide remarks, but Brad's attitude seemed to change when he learned about Whitney's pregnancy. Perhaps he felt guilty towards my mom for us not being able to have children. As Whitney's belly grew, conversations with Brad increased. Whitney's due date was drawing close. At home, the anticipation for the first grandchild made Dad and Mom restless. And then, Whitney finally gave birth. Our family was overjoyed, and relatives gathered together even though it wasn't Christmas. Attending Whitney's baby shower were Brad and me. Brad's parents, Whitney and my dad and mom, and Whitney's husband Chuck and his parents. It was the first time so many relatives had gathered together. The stars of the show were, of course, Whitney and her baby. I was busy in the kitchen preparing the food and drinks. With everything ready, the party started. After we all toasted, Brad approached Whitney and the baby. Whitney handed the baby to Brad, and he held the baby in his arms. Normally, showing a baby to relatives would be a common sight, but something felt off. Brad looked at the baby with such a loving gaze, as if he were holding his own child. The affection he showed towards his wife's sister's child seemed a bit too intense. Without caring about that, Brad held the baby and murmured, "Hello, baby. Aw, you're so cute." After showering the baby with love, he turned to me and bitterly said, "If only you could actually have kids." Followed by a sigh. "Still really cute. Wonder who it looks like." He insulted me in front of all the relatives, seemingly unaware of the icy atmosphere that followed. In the frozen silence, my dad, Brad's parents, Chuck, and his parents gathered around Brad and Whitney, enclosing them. Whitney and Brad, engrossed with the baby, hadn't noticed until Chuck finally spoke up. "Really, it doesn't seem to take after me. It seems to have few similarities with Whitney too." He calmly confronted Brad. It seemed Whitney and Brad finally noticed the awkward air. Surrounded by relatives, they appeared to be huddling together. "Overall, Brad, it seems to take after you, don't you think?" Brad's dad added to the tension, saying, "Indeed. Brad, it's the spitting image of you when you were little." His voice was cold, inappropriate for the celebration. Seeing Brad taken aback, I couldn't help but smile. Brad was unaware that I had been laying the groundwork with the relatives. Months ago, I happened to see Brad's mobile phone. That day, I had taken the morning off to go to the hospital and found Brad's phone left on the dining table. Thinking to deliver it to him at work later, I was about to put it in my bag when the phone vibrated. Curiosity led me to glance at the screen, displaying a message from Whitney.
Your baby is growing bigger.
My blood ran cold. Next, I was seething with anger. Whitney was trying to steal Brad. Given Whitney's past behavior, there was no doubt in my mind. To confirm, I looked at the message exchange between Whitney and Brad. It was an affair. Whitney planned to pass Brad's child as Chuck's. Brad was waiting for the right time to divorce me and remarry Whitney. I took photos of the message exchange as evidence. Since then, I've acted oblivious. Brad's parents believed me immediately due to our close relationship. They also felt sorry for their son's actions. I approached Chuck about it once before Whitney gave birth. He seemed to have had suspicions about Whitney's pregnancy. Showing him the evidence, he agreed to my plan. And so, we've come to this moment. Brad, caught off guard, while Whitney smiled brightly.
Stop it, everyone, that's such a bad joke,
she said, feigning innocence.
Would you stop your bad jokes?
The voice trembled with anger. I felt sorry for asking everyone to play along until now. And Whitney seemed to finally sense the deep loathing in his angry voice. Whitney's complexion changed. Noticing this, Brad stepped in to defend her. Hey, Whitney's just tired from giving birth. No need to speak like that. I confronted Brad, fueled by the future he planned for his mistress. I see you can be kind for the sake of your future wife. I showed him the screen of his mobile phone. The photo of the message exchange with Whitney. Brad, shocked then glaring, yelled,
"What the hell is this?"
He stood up, grabbing me by the collar.
When did you start doing such dirty things?
He didn't even try to make excuses. It would have been better if he had tried to explain it was all a misunderstanding. When he raised his fist at me, Chuck intervened.
Stop raising your hand to a woman.
The grip Chuck had on Brad's arm was forceful. Brad shook off his hand and retorted in frustration.
Saying that. Aren't you two the ones in a shady relationship?
Retreating while rubbing his grabbed arm. Whitney, seizing the moment, jumped into the fray.
Yeah. Instead of doubting Brad and me, you should be looking into these too.
However, it seemed like no one was listening to her. The silence was broken by me and Whitney's dad. Enough, Whitney. Dad had always been a man of few words. He was gentle and, according to Mom, sometimes too soft, never getting angry at Whitney's misbehavior. But this time, he couldn't stay silent. It's your bad habit, isn't it? I thought you had changed after getting married. But stealing your sister's husband. Dad spoke quietly, but with a voice as cold as ice to Whitney. I should have scolded you more. I didn't want you to see me like this. After giving me a sorrowful look, Dad slapped Whitney's cheek hard.
Ouch!
Looking down at Whitney holding her cheek, he sighed and then turned to Brad.
No, Donald. It's not like that. This is all a misunderstanding.
Brad finally tried to defend himself just as Dad's fist hit him. Brad crumpled to the ground. Then, Dad loudly said to them,
The pain you're feeling is nothing compared to what Zoe and Chuck went through. Do you understand?
Whitney's sobbing could be heard, though it was doubtful if her tears were from remorse. Dad turned to Chuck and his parents to apologize deeply. I'm truly sorry for the unforgivable act my daughter has committed. Mom also apologized next to Dad. Then to Brad's parents, I'm sorry for raising my hand to Brad in front of you, apologizing deeply once again. Brad's parents also apologized to us.
What is this? I did nothing wrong.
Brad began to shout, breaking the silence.
It's all because Zoe is infertile.
What a pitiful sight.
So, it's not my fault.
Whitney also started to struggle.
It's Zoe's fault. Having such a wonderful husband but not being able to bear children. So I decided to have his child instead.
Whitney seemed to realize midway. No one was on their side. Cold stares were fixed on them. I decided to make it clear. Listen, Whitney. I struggled to keep my anger from seeping into my gentle tone. The cause of infertility wasn't me.
Wah!
Whitney was stunned. We had fertility tests done. Everyone listened silently to my voice. The results showed that Brad was the cause. The room went quiet.
Wah! No, that.
Whitney's eyes began to dart around. A habit when she's hiding something.
Brad? That's a lie, right?
Whitney confronted Brad, but he was deflated.
I don't accept those test results.
Brad couldn't accept that he was the one unable to have children, but I showed the hospital's test result papers. Dad and Mom looked at the evidence, and from Whitney's reaction, it seemed they realized something.
Whitney, whose child is that baby really?
Delivering the final blow.
It's Chuck's child, obviously.
She seemed unaware that her story was changing by the moment.
Then, to put Chuck's mind at ease, why not do a DNA test?
Whitney's eyes darted around nervously.
There's no need for that. It's Chuck's child.
Mom approached Whitney, speaking to her with the gentleness one uses with a small child. Whitney, let's get tested, shall we? I want to believe you, Whitney. Let me believe you this time. Her voice trembled towards the end. Mom was sobbing, huddled over.
You're old enough, Whitney. It's time to take responsibility.
Dad told Whitney, then apologized again to everyone gathered. He promised to report the results later, and Whitney's baby celebration party came to an end. Whitney stubbornly refused the DNA test, but her attitude only spurred our parents more. Dad tried to persuade Whitney himself, but she wasn't willing to listen. Eventually, without Whitney's consent, the test was forcibly conducted. Meanwhile, I had moved out of the house I shared with Brad. Brad, still not accepting his infertility, joked, "So, Whitney will move in after you leave." But I was already starting the divorce proceedings, undistracted. Months after the family gathering, Mom contacted me about Whitney's DNA test results. We were to return to our parents' house to hear the outcome. Brad, Chuck, and I listened intently to the results, which were unexpected by all. A heavy sigh escaped everyone's lips. The father of Whitney's child was neither Chuck nor Brad.
What on earth does this mean?
Dad couldn't contain his anger. Even more furious than when he had slapped Whitney.
What does this mean, you say?
Whitney asked rhetorically, but no one supported her.
Whitney, explain yourself.
Chuck admonished her in a low voice. Resigned, perhaps realizing she couldn't escape the truth any longer, Whitney explained in a small voice.
I don't know who the father is. Chuck was so busy with work right after we got married, and I felt so lonely.
Her voice gradually turned whiny.
It's not my fault Chuck made me feel lonely, right? The child is innocent. Let's pretend that night never happened. Please.
Whitney moved closer to Chuck, not Brad.
So, what about you and Brad?
Chuck asked gently.
Right. Brad was just for fun. I was entertaining him because things weren't going well with Zoe.
Whitney glanced at Brad and laughed. Besides, Brad may come from a wealthy family, but he's so stingy. He never spoiled me. Chuck, you're the only one for me. Whitney clung to Chuck's arm. Brad, faced with the realization of his infertility and Whitney's abandonment, was just staring blankly. So it is. Chuck muttered softly, then forcefully shook off Whitney's clinging arm. Whitney fell off the couch, But Chuck stood up, towering over her. I've had enough. Talking to you any further is a waste of time. His eyes filled with hatred and sorrow. Dad and Mom said, we'll send the divorce papers later. Thank you for everything up to now. Without giving Whitney another look, Chuck left the house. It's the expected outcome, Mom said, placing a hand on Whitney's shoulder. From now on, you're nothing to me. Leave this house immediately. Mom had always ultimately accepted Whitney despite her behavior. But this time it seemed she had reached her limit. I've been too lenient. But don't worry, I won't bother with you anymore. Live strong on your own. We had never seen Mom react so coldly before. But her resolve seemed firm, as if she had come to a clear decision. Dad agreed with her decision, and it was decided that Whitney would be kicked out of the house. So, how long do you plan to stay here? I asked Brad, who was left behind. Brad slowly looked up at me. Then, as if realizing something too late, he asked, Zoe, that kid wasn't mine, right? If so, I'm innocent. Whitney was just playing around, as she said. So, why don't we call off the divorce and start over? I was speechless. After all the mocking, he had the nerve to say that. I have no intention of starting over with you. I wish I never have to see you again. So please, leave this house right now. I grabbed a mop nearby and hit Brad with it. Get out now! I shouted as I chased him out. Later, I finalized the divorce with Brad. I had gotten along well with Mil and wanted to keep in touch, but it wasn't to be. Mil and I had a farewell meal together, mourning our separation. Upon learning of my divorce with Brad, Whitney, who had been hesitant, agreed to divorce Chuck and finally left the family home. She seemed to intend to move in with Brad, but he refused her. Brad, too, was no longer in a position to support Whitney financially. After our divorce, Brad left his job due to discomfort at our shared workplace. He tried to help with the family business but became estranged from his family and is now looking for new employment while surviving on part-time work. Of course, with alimony payments to me, his life is far from easy. Whitney moving in would be nothing but a nuisance, especially considering she played with his feelings. Shunned by her family, abandoned by Brad, and pursued by Chuck for alimony. Whitney began to drift through the night streets, escaping from everything. But she wasn't the type to attract ordinary men anymore. Once relying on her beauty, post-pregnancy Whitney did nothing to restore her figure. Losing all remnants of her past glory. Unable to escape the glory of being adored in her youth, she became obsessed with a man she met in a nightclub. Drowning in debt and resorting to selling herself, she has fallen to a point of no return. Dad and Mom hired a detective agency to track Whitney's whereabouts, determined never to let her return home. They sold the family home and moved to a condominium in the next town. Mom, sharing this with me, looked sad but resolved not to extend a helping hand to Whitney. If her life were in danger, that'd be different. But that's it. We've decided not to do anything more. Mom's too gentle to bear Whitney's current state, but knows extending help again wouldn't lead to her reform. This is what being a mom is about. Though I never had children of my own, witnessing Mom's compassion and strength fills me with respect. Dad and Mom have taken in Whitney's child, who is nearly 2 years old. His rapid growth is astonishing, and I've been experiencing childcare during visits to my parents' house. I wonder what kind of adult this child without Dad or Mom will become. Yet, I'm determined to shower him with enough love to never feel lesser for it. Today, once again, I received an email from Mom about Whitney's child. We are planning to go on a trip together on the next day off. On my way home from work, I looked up at the night sky and wished for the child's growth. May he grow up to be honest, bright, and earnest. And then, I return to my solitary apartment, where no one waits. I'm Jessica, a 38-year-old office worker. I have been married to my husband, Brandon, for 5 years now. However, we've been struggling to have children. Being the eldest and only son, Brandon has always been under pressure from his mother, Chloe, to have a boy since we got married. These days, few people care about the gender of their children, and either a son or daughter can be an heir. Brandon himself doesn't care about the gender and says there's no rush to have children. But Chloe sees me as an adversary and always tells me when Brandon's not around. A woman who can't have children is useless in this family. If you can't have one, you might as well leave. Her words have hurt me deeply. I'm sorry, Chloe, but honestly, your words are very pressuring. I wish you wouldn't say such things. I finally gathered the courage to express my feeling to Chloe. But she didn't understand it at all and became even more oppressive, telling me not to defy her. I was shocked. I never expected such words from her. At first, I endured it because she's Brandon's mother and I didn't want to cause any trouble. But enduring Chloe's sarcasm while undergoing fertility treatments was mentally taxing, and my health started to decline. Realizing I couldn't hide it anymore, I confided in Brandon. Furious, Brandon sternly warned Chloe, which stopped her surprise visits to our apartment for a while, but she continued to hurl insults daily through WhatsApp. Then one day, I found out I was pregnant at the fertility clinic. The first sight of the fetal ultrasound filled me with indescribable emotions. When I showed Brandon the ultrasound at home, we both cried tears of joy. But our happiness was short-lived as I remembered a significant problem. Chloe. Telling her about the pregnancy would surely lead to her frequent visits, insisting that pregnancy isn't an illness, telling me to move around, or bragging about her own experiences. The doctor advised me not to overexert myself until a heartbeat is confirmed, so I was torn about what to do. After discussing with Brandon, we decided I should stay at my parents' house for a while. If I'm at my parents' house, even if I'm not feeling well, my parents are there, and Chloe won't make a surprise visit to my parents' house. It's close to my workplace and Chloe wouldn't barge in there. I called my mother right away, explaining about the pregnancy in Chloe, and decided to return home for a while. Brandon drove me to my parents' house, where they were overjoyed about my pregnancy. After greeting my parents, Brandon returned to our apartment. Being back at my parents' house, away from Chloe, brought me peace of mind. Soon after, morning sickness hit, and I spent days in bed. At work, my pale face raised concerns, and my boss suggested me to take a break, which I gratefully accepted. Many women at my job, including those who have undergone fertility treatments, understood my situation. Their support was comforting. Other than severe morning sickness, my pregnancy was uneventful, and the baby grew healthily. Feeling the first kicks was indescribably touching, and I lovingly caressed my belly every day. In fact, Brandon and I had already planned to move to a bigger house once we had a child. The reason is, our apartment was getting old, and while it's fine for just the two of us, it felt inconvenient for raising a child. We had set various criteria like proximity to stations, hospitals, and shopping facilities, and were searching accordingly. Then, Brandon suddenly sent me a photo. It was of a new high-rise condominium near the station. The area around the condo had everything needed for living, like commercial facilities and hospitals, and it was close to nurseries and schools, making it convenient for kids in the future. Completion is expected next month, and I casually entered a lottery for it. Surprisingly, we won. If you don't like it, we can just transfer it to someone else. Jessica, you can see it and decide. Hearing this, I immediately opened their website, was taken aback by the stylish design of the rooms, and exclaimed, "What?" The latest system kitchen, a bathroom with a sauna. Moreover, the unit we won was on the top floor of the 30-story building. The view from the window was amazing. I was a bit hesitant about the price, but Brandon works at a top-tier company, and with our salaries, we could afford it, so I decided to sign the contract for this condominium. Of course, I couldn't keep the purchase of a new high-rise condominium from my in-laws. I talked about it through Austin, my father-in-law. Austin said, "It's impressive that you young ones bought a condominium. If you need anything, I'm here to help." However, Chloe was not happy about this. When she found out we bought a high-rise condo, she was upset that we weren't living with her. Then, an incident happened. A week after moving in, Chloe suddenly visited. As usual, she went around the room complaining, but I entertained her with a smile. Then, suddenly, Chloe said she dropped her keys near the emergency stairs.
What? Why did you drop your keys by the emergency stairs? Don't tell me you climbed all the way up here?
I said, but apparently, she had dropped them while checking where the emergency stairs were, just in case. I went to the emergency stairs instead of Chloe to get the keys. At that moment,
"I'm taking this house."
I was suddenly pushed from behind, lost my balance, and fell down the stairs.
Ouch! Help, somebody!
Unable to stand due to pain and shock, I suddenly felt warm water flowing around my feet. Realizing I had probably broken my water, I thought about calling an ambulance, but since I had hit my head hard, I lost consciousness. When I woke up, I was in a hospital bed. Brandon was there, looking worriedly at me.
"Jessica, are you okay?"
Brandon asked, visibly shaken, as I woke up.
"Where am I? What happened to me?"
I was still confused from just waking up and had a fuzzy consciousness from the head injury. When I touched my stomach, I felt something was off. My stomach, which was big until recently, had shrunk. Realizing this, I felt the blood drain from my face.
"Hey, why is my stomach like this? Where's my baby? Where did my baby go?"
I asked Brandon. Then Brandon quietly began to speak. "The baby in your belly is." The moment I heard those words, I couldn't stop my tears and began crying out loud in the hospital room. Someone on the same floor found me, noticing the emergency staircase door left open. When they went to close it, they found me collapsed and hurriedly called an ambulance. Brandon asked why I approached the emergency stairs, so I explained everything about my interaction with Chloe. I was mentally harassed by Chloe when Brandon wasn't around before, which had once caused me to fall ill. Because of that, Brandon instructed me to always carry a voice recorder. Of course, I started recording the moment Chloe showed up unannounced. After listening to the voice recorder, it was clear that Chloe was the culprit. Brandon was furious to learn that his own mother had done such a thing. Then, a call came in on Brandon's mobile phone from a relative. On the call, Brandon heard a shocking fact. It seemed Chloe, thinking the baby had died, was telling relatives while crying. "Oh, my poor sweet grandchild has gone to heaven. It's so sad. It's because Jessica, even though she's pregnant, went out riding a bicycle." She was making up absurd stories. However, Austin, who was present, had heard nothing like that from either me or Brandon and was looking at Chloe in utter disbelief. It seemed impossible that Austin didn't know anything about it. And the idea of a woman in her 9th month of pregnancy riding a bicycle. That's why the relative called Brandon. It was unbelievable. Then Brandon, taking the voice recorder, said, "Jessica, let me borrow this for a bit. Can you leave the rest to me?" He then left the hospital room. As Brandon left, my parents arrived. After I explained everything, they were both shocked and angry. I decided to trust Brandon and wait in the hospital room for the outcome. Meanwhile, Brandon met with the relative who had called him. It turned out Chloe was gathering relatives at her house, explaining the incident. Of course, her words were nonsense, and she was just trying to make herself look innocent. Some relatives believed Chloe and wept, while others were skeptical and viewed her with suspicion. Suddenly, Brandon burst in, causing Chloe to look at him in surprise. "Huh? Brandon, why are you here? You were supposed to be with Jessica. She needs you. It's so sad about the baby." I was looking forward to its birth," Chloe said, even feigning tears. At that moment, something snapped in Brandon.
"Enough, Mom. I know everything. You pushed Jessica down the emergency stairs,"
he said, pulling out the voice recorder in front of the relatives. Everyone was shocked to hear the conversation recorded so vividly. Who heard the voice could not hide their surprise.
"Is this true?"
Austin, whose face turned pale due to the shock, asked Chloe.
"No, that's not true. This is nonsense. I didn't go near the emergency stairs."
Even after hearing the recording, Chloe insisted she hadn't done it. However, there was a security camera nearby, and its footage would surely show me and Chloe entering the emergency stairwell. When Brandon mentioned this, Chloe, who had been speaking fluently until then, turned pale and began to tremble.
"How awful. We're family, aren't we? How dare you shame your own mother like this?"
Chloe clung to Brandon, insisting she was innocent and that it was Jessica who had slipped on her own. Even if that were true, leaving someone who had fallen and not helping them is questionable. However, the relatives who had already heard the voice recording did not believe Chloe's story. Instead, they urged her to go to the police and turn herself in.
"It's not me. I'm not the bad one. You understand, don't you? You know I'm not the kind of person who would do this. Prove it in front of everyone."
Chloe desperately appealed to Austin to affirm her innocence. But no one believed Chloe's story anymore. Soon, the police arrived, and from the audio and the subsequent security camera footage, it was clear that Chloe was the perpetrator. She was taken to the police station and arrested. The reason she did this was because the baby was a girl. Chloe had always been fixated on having a grandson, and when she found out the baby in the womb was a girl, she was disappointed. She thought that by pretending this baby never existed, she could try for a boy next time. When I heard this from the police, my head went blank with shock. Despite all that had happened, the baby grew healthily in an incubator and was discharged after 2 months. A few days after coming home from the hospital, Austin visited our apartment to apologize for the incident. He said that he and Chloe had divorced, that their house was sold, and he was going to move back to his family home. It was sad that the house where Brandon had grown up was gone, but since Austin wasn't to blame, we told him he was always welcome to visit. We regularly let Austin see his granddaughter after that. He adored his first grandchild and played with her with such kindness in his eyes. 3 years later, our second child, a boy, was born. Our daughter, now a big sister, couldn't wait to take care of her brother and was always by his side. Watching them was heartwarming, and every day was filled with happiness. But that happiness was disrupted by a visit from someone. The doorbell rang repeatedly, and when I checked the monitor, to my surprise, it was Chloe. I thought I would never see her again, and seeing her brought back memories of that day, making me feel nauseous. "What do you want now?"
"I have no intention of seeing you again.
"Please leave," I said, but Chloe wouldn't listen. Apparently, Chloe had fallen ill, struggling daily with her health and finding it difficult to go to the hospital without a car. She had divorced Austin, and their house was now just an empty lot. She had no one else to turn to for help. Shockingly, Chloe knew I had given birth to a boy. She had apparently seen us in town, noticing Brandon holding our son. To Chloe, it was the long-desired grandson. She was determined to live with us and make the boy fond of her. "So you finally became a proper woman, giving birth to a boy. When you were pregnant with a girl, I was so disappointed in you.
But now that you've had a boy, let's forget the past and live together, shall we?"
For a moment, I doubted my own ears. Live together after all that? Impossible.
"What are you talking about? After what you did, living together is impossible. Leave now, or I'll call the police."
Unfortunately, Brandon was at work at this crucial time. In distress, I immediately called Austin. He was supposed to visit the apartment today to see his son and daughter. With trembling hands, I called Austin. It turned out he was already near the apartment, so he hurried over. When Austin arrived, Chloe exclaimed in surprise. We couldn't argue in the entrance of the apartment building, as it would disturb others. But I had no intention of letting Chloe, whom we had cut ties with, into our apartment again. I gave Chloe an ultimatum, telling her I would call the police if she really didn't leave. Realizing her wish wouldn't be fulfilled, Chloe started to create a scene at the entrance and began arguing with Austin. Troubled, I contacted Brandon at work. After hearing the situation, Brandon called the police, and they soon arrived at our apartment. The police, understanding the situation, took Chloe away in a police car. As the commotion was in a conspicuous place, several residents of the apartment witnessed it. I felt sorry for causing inconvenience to many people. Later, after Brandon returned home, we discussed the situation with Austin and decided to move. As long as we lived here, Chloe would surely come back. We couldn't risk something happening to the children next time. Besides, Austin, though he said he had gone back to his family home, was living alone since his parents had passed away. Our daughter liked Austin and had previously expressed a desire to live with him. Austin is a kind person, and leaving him alone at his age worried us. When we proposed living together, Austin was very happy, despite everything that had happened. Afterwards, we bought a used property in the next town. Though it was second-hand, the house itself was very nice, and the surrounding environment was good too. Living in a high-rise was nice, but raising children in a place surrounded by nature seemed better. Right after moving, my daughter and Austin went to a mountain to hunt for beetles. Seeing them so happy made me feel that deciding to live together and choosing this place was the right decision. Once a month, we invite my parents over, and we all enjoy a home party, leading a happy life. Meanwhile, according to someone I was close with at the high-rise apartment, Chloe, undeterred, visited the high-rise again. But when told we had moved and she couldn't find out where, she left disappointed. If it weren't for what happened, Chloe might have been here, feeling the children's growth with us. Well, it's a natural consequence, but still. Later, I heard Chloe reluctantly returned to her hometown, rented a small apartment, and now lives a lonely life, working part-time in cleaning.
Mom and Dad are taking me overseas. This is just going to be luggage, so I'll leave this behind with you. It might be hard for you, but it's a good way to kill time, right?
Kristen said with a smirk, implying her superiority to Sophia. Kelly, who married into an elite family, always boasted about her daughter Kristen. On the other hand, my family, with Sophia the same age as Kristen, come from a normal family. Influenced by Kelly, Kristen grew up flaunting her financial comfort and academic excellence, always emphasizing how different she was from Sophia. For Sophia too, this summer vacation is crucial, as she's preparing for college entrance exams. Kristen, caught up in her own excitement, left a pile of school assignments at our house and went off to her overseas trip. However, Sophia, the recipient of Kristen's spite, decides to take action. My name is Mary. I'm a working mother in a regular household, with my daughter Sophia facing exams this year. Every morning, I make breakfast, wake up Sophia and my husband Harold, hand them their lunches, and we all head out. Life was supposed to continue like this, day after day. But it quickly changed. Now, my life is filled with struggles. It's because of my sister-in-law Kelly, married to Adam, who works in a globally expanding company. Kelly, who married a rich, and her daughter Kristen, have become a source of stress. Sophia and Kristen, being the same age, were inseparable like twins during their childhood. Living not far from each other's homes, family gatherings, especially during long vacations, meant they were always together. But as Kristen started attending various classes and tutoring, their playtime significantly reduced. Gradually, we lost touch with Kelly's family, and by the time we met again, Kristen, maintaining top grades at a prestigious private school, had become Kelly's pride. In Adam's absence due to frequent business trips, Kelly enjoyed her life as an elegant housewife. With Kristen, nearly guaranteed a scholarship through school recommendations due to her grades, you could say their whole family was sailing smoothly. However, for Kelly and Kristen, With too much time on their hands, our family, working parents and Sophia studying hard for general exams, became an easy target for mockery. When did Kelly's assertive personality twist into something unpleasant? Her straightforward and cool attitude was lost, replaced with sending us unpleasant, boastful messages. It wouldn't matter if I was the only target. But on weekends, they started visiting, ostensibly to play with us. Bringing expensive confectionery as a pretext, clearly to disturb us, especially Sophia.
We bought this cake, so let's have tea. Sophia should come and join us. Kristen, go call her,
Kelly said, summoning Sophia without my permission. Of course, Sophia was studying. Soon, Sophia came down to the living room, looking displeased. Kristen, with a somewhat mean smile, nudges her.
People taking general exams have to cram a lot, right? Must be tough. But since your cousin's here to play, you should entertain her.
Well, you don't need to study, but I. Unlike the provocative Kristen, Sophia is shy and can't stand up for herself. All I can do is try to end the tea party quickly. I swiftly prepared the tea and hastened them to finish the cake. Meanwhile, Kelly keeps bragging about how brilliant Kristen is and how hard she works at her extracurriculars.
Isn't it odd? You're a mother and you hardly ever boast about Sophia.
Kelly suddenly said so out of nowhere. But the reason I don't retort with boastful stories is that Sophia has asked me not to. Sophia possesses many virtues that neither I nor Harold have. I always want to counter. But Sophia seems to think there's no need to let Kelly and the rest know. I tolerate and respect Sophia's wishes, responding nonchalantly.
Mom always bragged more about you than me, right? It's the same thing.
Kelly, looking satisfied, laughed it off.
Yeah, that's right.
This way everything ends as if nothing happened. Yes, our parents also favored Kelly over me, always showing more enthusiasm and expectation for her. They sided with Kelly, who married the elite Adam, all the time. I could tolerate that, but what really got to me was how they constantly compared the grandchildren, always praising Kristen. I was utterly fed up with our parents' attitude. Despite feeling a strong irritation inside, I had to endure it for Sophia's sake, day after day. Then, the children's summer vacation arrived. But with it came turmoil. Kelly's family was preparing for a month-long trip abroad. Since they seemed to be unconcerned with academic studies, we had been hearing about their proud travel plans every week. We thought about taking a trip ourselves, but Sophia was determined.
Without Kristen around, I'll be able to study in peace.
So, we dropped our plans. However, just before their departure, Kelly's family showed up at our house with a pile of assignments.
Kelly, what is all this?
Summer homework, of course. I faced them, feeling a mix of surprise and bewilderment. The massive amount of assignments, covering our table, was obviously from Kristen's school.
We're leaving soon, right? These would just be extra luggage, and Kristen doesn't have time for such tedious stuff, so we thought we'd leave it to Sophia. Yeah, it might be a bit tough for you, but give it your best shot.
Sophia and I were both stunned. Kelly and her family wore smug smiles. They didn't even try to hide their condescending looks. But did they realize how absurd their words were?
I have my own assignments, and summer courses too.
For a student facing exams, there's no time to waste on trivial things. Sophia's dream school is highly competitive. She couldn't possibly spare time for Kristen's work on top of her own studies and summer courses. Sophia tried to speak up, but Kelly cut her off.
It's Sophia's last summer in high school too, so I originally said no to this plan, you know. But you guys aren't going anywhere, right? Unlike our Adam, traveling must be hard for you guys.
Kristen joined in with a spiteful look at Sophia.
My school's on high level, so I'm not sure if Sophia can handle it, but it's a good study opportunity, right?
After their carefree remarks, they left the blank assignments and departed for their trip. Adam probably didn't know about this. He's been away for work, leaving before the summer break. Without the fair and serious Adam around, they brazenly dumped this on us. I tried talking to our parents about Kelly's outrageous behavior, but they still sided with her, making me furious.
You need to study anyways, so just do it. Kristen is giving you this chance, which makes her the better child. Sophia's not trying hard enough. Instead of complaining, why doesn't she just study quietly?
My mom said so selfishly. With Dad always agreeing with her, I realized I couldn't expect anything from our parents. Dejected, I gave up on consulting them. Sophia not getting a recommendation was largely due to her reserved nature. Those selected for recommendation slots were active in student council, clubs, and had outstanding grades. Sophia, being shy, always found it challenging. But she was distressed enough to say she could study more in the absence of Kelly's family. I was filled with seething anger. Sophia too was furious. But, unlike my vehement refusal, she reacted differently. To my surprise, she started tackling Kristen's assignments alongside her own studies.
I won't lose. If I can't beat Kristen, I can't beat the exams. Mom, I'll show them I can do it.
That way of thinking never even crossed my mind, but Sophia was determined.
I'll create work that will shut them up.
She was breathing heavily. If Kelly and Kristen returned to find the assignments untouched, they would be troubled. But my concern was how much more they would interfere with Sophia after that. Kelly and her family were looking down on us, thinking, she can't possibly do it. Well, then, we just had to surpass their expectations. Next time we're asked for something, we can just say, we're going to refuse, since we already completed that massive load of summer homework. Impressed by Sophia's positive attitude, I changed my mindset. No longer just enduring, but ready to fight back boldly, that was the only way to win against Kelly and her family. I confessed everything to Harold and persuaded him to join us as a family in tackling the tasks. Sophia and I were more than ready, but Harold, preferring to think it over, called it a day. However, within 2 days, Harold came up with a summer vacation schedule to get through the assignments. He planned not only the homework but also divided household chores among the 3 of us, set days to check progress, and even ensured Sophia had time for her own studies. He thought of everything, including breaks from the study-heavy routine. We were amazed at the precision of his hastily made plan.
Dad, you're actually amazing?
Sophia asked innocently. Harold with a bashful smile replied.
It's what I do every day at work.
Though he seemed modest, he was the best leader for Sophia and I. As a result of our family's united effort, we finished the assignments perfectly and ahead of schedule. Sophia was able to focus on her studies, and her mock exam scores improved significantly. I was relieved to see her gaining confidence. Harold, in a great mood, picked up one particular assignment for a final check.
This French essay is outstanding. With this, you and I could go back to college.
The truth is, Harold and I couldn't pursue doctoral studies due to financial reasons. Working on this reminded us of the French literature seminar room where we first met. That was how hard we were tackling the assignments. Studying and researching really was fascinating. So fascinating that it made me worry that Kristen, who considers such things as troublesome, might miss out on this joy. Right before summer vacation ended, Kelly's family returned. They collected the assignments without much inspection, seemingly satisfied that they were just done. Their own stories seemed far more important to them. Then, a few days into the new term, an unusually cheerful Kelly and her family visited. Apparently, some of the assignments were exceptionally good, earning praise from teachers. Kelly and Kristen were proud, despite having no part in the work.
And the French essay. Next week, it will be presented as an outstanding piece in front of everyone. Which reminds me, didn't you and Harold major in French literature or something? Seems like it didn't lead to great job prospects. Anyways, since it's Kristen's assignment, she'll be the one receiving the accolades.
Kelly probably enjoyed thinking we were desperately working on just a child's homework. Kristen could hardly contain her mocking laughter, delighted with the bonus recognition. Later, Kelly sent us a photo of Kristen holding the award certificate, but I just replied, "Congratulations," and deleted the picture. However, trouble arose the following month. In the middle of the night, an enraged Kelly barged into our house. Kristen crying beside her.
Hey Mary! Write that French thing again. You did it once, so you can do it. What? At this ungodly hour? You're asking for French.
As I tried to calm down the frantic Kelly at the front door, Harold and Sophia woke up. The French essay from the summer vacation, which earned Kristen the recognition, was selected for a presentation at the cultural festival. She accepted, thinking it was just a reading, but then was told to submit a new essay for another competition. Kristen struggles with French, even simple compositions are hard for her.
So she thought, I'll just have Sophia write it again.
And imposed a deadline on Sophia without her consent. But Sophia ignored the new French essay request. The unity during summer vacation had grown into a big confidence boost for her, strengthening her trust in the family. Today, just before the festival, Sophia finally responded to Kristen, who was angrily pressing for the deadline.
I didn't write the summer vacation essay, so I don't know. Why don't you ask Mom and the others?
Kristen, always hiding behind Kelly, was essentially a timid and mean-spirited girl. She couldn't say anything directly to us. Sophia was unusually cold to her, and in a panic, she thought of consulting Kelly, but unfortunately, she was out at a mom friend's party and didn't get home until very late at night. When Kelly got home, Kristen was waiting and crying, confessing about the essay. Kelly, who had no intention of going to the cultural festival, calling it child's play, was therefore uninformed and shocked. Without caring that it was midnight, she rushed over to our house in a panic. So, it's about that French essay. Make a new one, please. Poor Kristen, she's been deceived by Sophia. It seemed that was the situation. Honestly, I was surprised at Kelly's audacity to leave such a big problem entirely up to us. Sophia, watching Kelly and the others screaming at the front door, remained cool and unimpressed. Anyway, we no longer had a reason to write a new essay. I recommended admitting honestly that she couldn't write.
I can't let her do something so pathetic,
Kelly retorted. But our family firmly continued to refuse.
We've done our duty with the summer assignments. We won't do anything more. Enough is enough, or we'll call the police, or Adam, before that.
With Harold's words, Kelly suddenly fell silent and took Kristen home with her. A few hours later, our home phone rang. It was our displeased mom back home. Apparently, Kelly had gone crying to her parents right after.
You should write Kristen's essay, Mom said.
But maybe because she was woken up at an unreasonable hour, Mom was complaining differently than usual, not taking Kelly's side.
Seriously, both Kelly and Kristen are the worst. Kelly is always angry, and Kristen is always just tagging along. Calling in the middle of the night without even considering the inconvenience of others.
The phone call continued with complaints about Kelly. Mom might be a victim in her own way, but she just seemed to be looking down on Kelly. I quickly refused to help with the essay. We no longer wanted to be involved with them. Later, they somehow managed to finish the French essay using a translation app. Naturally, the quality was miles apart from the summer assignment. The teachers were in an uproar over the poor quality. There were even suggestions that the award-winning assignment might have been plagiarized, and Kristen was questioned.
That essay you submitted for the festival, I've never seen such poor quality. We've discussed it with other teachers, and we think we need to verify if you really wrote your summer vacation essay yourself. I did it, teacher. I really did. I didn't plagiarize, I swear. If that's true, there's no way your essay would be this poorly written. The simple grammar and spelling mistakes are glaring. It's as if it was hastily written in a panic to meet the deadline. For a high school student, anyway, you'll have to explain properly.
After being repeatedly questioned by the teacher without her mother's protection, Kristen finally confessed to having someone else do all her assignments. As a result, her grades were reassessed. The presentation at the cultural festival was, of course, cancelled, and she was given a suspension, with more assignments than those from the summer vacation. Her internal grades were significantly reduced. The details of the assignment commission were also recorded in her report, and it seemed the incident was over. But that was not the end. Following the severe reprimand she received, classmates started confessing problems with her school life. Turns out, Kristen had been targeting poor or timid kids, throwing money at them to forcefully do her assignments. It was revealed that those who couldn't resist because of poverty or those humiliated and laughed at when called out by Kristen's group brought the issue to light. The school tried to settle the matter quietly. To clarify the situation, Kristen underwent several interviews and investigations. This was no mere issue for a report card. The incident led to the cancellation of Kristen's designated school recommendation. Since the second-ranking student took her place, Kristen was forced to take general entrance exams, but she had long lost any time to study at school. The season quickly turned to exam season, and, as a result of her lack of study, she failed everything. On the other hand, since Kelly and her family hardly visited our house after the cultural festival, Sophia, who had diligently studied, got into a university. Her efforts paid off, and she got into the national university she wanted. Our house was wrapped in a celebratory mood, and I made a lavish dinner to celebrate. Kelly, without changing her heart, forced Kristen into a gap year, fearing they would be seen as a family that couldn't send their daughter to college. Kristen, maybe due to her pride, started studying at home but made no progress. The atmosphere in Kelly's house grew worse by the day, with constant parent-child fights, but all they blamed was us. Adam finally became suspicious of Kristen's attitude, which seemed to target Sophia excessively. He was completely unaware of the incident Kristen had caused at school. But once it was revealed, Adam was deeply shocked. "I can't believe it. Kristen has grown into a person who looks down on others, flaunting her wealth and just taking what's good." Kelly had baseless absolute confidence in her parenting. Adam trusted her, but it was Kristen who had caused an incident involving the school and several classmates. Desperate, he tried to convince them to at least apologize to our family, but their pride got in the way, and they refused. They wouldn't bow their heads, and instead, kept trying to put the blame on us. Adam, hearing bad things about us every day, came to despise his wife and child from the bottom of his heart and eventually decided to divorce. Kelly and Kristen, kicked out of their luxurious house, decided to return to their parents' home. Kelly thought they would be welcomed since they brought cute Kristen, but things didn't go as she planned. Our parents, who always supported her, started treating Kristen almost like a jinx because of the multiple problems she caused. And their attitude changed drastically. They had always been harsh on Sophia but now turned to her with kind voices, desperately trying to please her. They even tried to send her expensive gifts. This confused both me and Sophia. "For your successful admission, how about we buy you a luxury brand bag? You've worked so hard, you deserve all the luxury." "Yeah, unlike Kristen, it's okay if it's a bit expensive, tell your grandpa what you want." Their parents praised Sophia and disparaged Kristen. Sophia had long lost her affection for her grandparents and wouldn't be appeased with a brand bag. Neither me nor Sophia wanted to get back at Kelly and her family for what they had done. We didn't want to look down on them, so we refused the gift even if it was for celebration. Why were our parents trying to please us? It seemed to be related to Kelly and her family coming back. "Kelly's back, right? We want you to help her. For the family. You know, we're getting old, and there are household chores." My mother hesitated on purpose. They couldn't handle Kelly and her family, so they were calling us to take care of them. But we had long lost any desire to see Kelly and her family's faces. Not just me, but my whole family refused and didn't step into my parents' house. Moreover, we had no intention of visiting them anymore. To my parents who were desperately trying to please us at our front door, Sophia smiled back and said, "We're moving. We're not coming back to this town, so take care of Kristen and her family. I have university, so please don't bother us anymore. Goodbye." What? Our parents could only stand there with mouths agape. Yes, we had decided to move all together after that summer vacation, regardless of the exam results. And so, we cut ties with my parents and Kelly's family and headed to a new town. The ones left behind are reportedly fighting every day at my parents' house. Since the divorce with Adam was finalized, their living standards plummeted, and Kelly, with no face to show to her mom friends, became increasingly reclusive. Without jobs, the mother and the daughter blamed each other in a nasty fight, causing uproar with my parents almost every day. As for us, we are expanding our social circle smoothly at the new place. Sophia studies seriously at the university, immersing herself in seminar research. She has made new friends in addition to her high school ones and looks happy going to the university every day. It was a year of mostly studying, but now Sophia has grown enough to balance both study and play. I hope she goes out more from now on. Although the moving expenses were a bit of a burden, we have enough savings for her to choose her favorite path. The unreasonable task of the summer vacation assignment was an absurd incident, but someday we'll be able to laugh about it, saying, "Remember when that happened?" By then, we'll remember not the malicious faces of Kelly and her family, but the unity and effort of our own family.
I gave your dead ex-husband's life insurance money to my eldest son's wife for her housewarming. What's yours is mine, so you shouldn't have any complaints.
Divorce? Understood. I guess he thought I would cry and refuse the divorce, because my husband seemed a bit surprised. Don't think everything will go your way. Just you watch. My name is Jennifer. I am actually remarried to my current husband, David. I was widowed from my previous husband, William, due to illness. William had a disease since his youth, which worsened and led to his death. Concerned about me being left alone, William left me a substantial amount of life insurance. I had no children with William. I met David through a relative's introduction. When I tried to refuse him, saying I wasn't a first-time bride,
"Don't worry about that,"
he said. I felt happy, as it seemed he accepted not just me but also William. Since remarrying David, due to my frail health and David's high income, I've been a housewife. I gave birth to our daughter Susan and our son Anthony, and I've tried my best with housework and child-rearing. David sometimes brought home stress from work, behaving selfishly and yelling suddenly, but I managed to get by. When David was in a bad mood, moocher, nuisance, he would call me things like that. But I am grateful to David for providing a financially comfortable life. David treated our son Anthony specially as the heir to the house. For Susan and Anthony's birthday and Christmas gifts, school entrance gifts, and other occasions, he clearly favored one over the other. During long vacations in summer, he would take Anthony to his parents' house and not return him for days. At David's parents' house, Anthony could eat sweets and play games all he wanted, messing up his daily rhythm and study habits. When he returned, he would rebel and look down on me, making it very difficult to return to our normal life. I appealed many times to stop this, as it wasn't good for Anthony, but
I took in a woman with a marriage history. A wife shouldn't talk back,
he said, and never accepted it. Susan disliked David and his family's home and left the house early. Susan got married about 5 years ago. She has children and is struggling with childcare. Anthony got married about 2 years ago. His wife was young and beautiful. I often had trouble with Anthony's wife, Nancy's attitude, but we didn't meet often, and I thought maybe that's just how young people are these days, so I didn't interfere much. Now, this happened about 2 years ago. When Anthony and Nancy had dinner at our house to celebrate their marriage, Nancy said as soon as she arrived,
"Wow, what a lovely house. Anthony grew up here? I'm so jealous. David, you're so successful, how impressive." "Well, my wife is useless and can't work, so I had to work hard alone. But I guess this house is getting a bit old, just like my wife. How unpleasant, houses and women shouldn't be old. Women should be young and cute like you, Nancy. Nancy, you work, right? That's commendable." In this day and age, capable women need to work and live in society. Unlike my useless wife.
David was smitten with the attractive Nancy and insulted me unnecessarily. This house is old, but I keep it well organized and clean. Perhaps because of David's groundless accusations, Nancy seems to think it's okay to look down on me just because I'm older. She even directed her condescending gaze at my eldest daughter, Susan.
Susan is just like Jennifer, huh? I think you should take care of your nails and wear some accessories. Have you given up just because you have kids? I won't become like Susan after marriage, Anthony, don't worry. Of course, you're different from Mom and Susan. They're so different, it's like they're not even the same species.
Nancy acts superior and out of line towards Susan, who is struggling with childcare every day, but neither David nor Anthony seem to notice how ridiculous it is. After the dinner, when Anthony and Nancy left, Susan said in a dismayed voice, "Her attitude is questionable, isn't it?"
Honestly, I don't want to be involved.
Regarding this, David said,
"Susan, are you angry because she hit the nail on the head?"
"Ah, women's jealousy is ugly," he said dismissively. Susan, looking truly disgusted, said,
"Dad, you need to look at things more calmly or you might lose your way. A woman shouldn't speak so arrogantly. You always say such presumptuous things, Susan. Just go home."
David, upset, locked himself in his room.
"Mom, if you have any troubles or concerns, please consult me right away. I'm kinda worried about you."
Susan left after saying that. One day, Susan invited me to a cafe in the neighborhood. Ever since that incident, Susan has been inviting me out more often, maybe to check if I'm all right.
"Mom, now that you're free from child-rearing, why don't you find a hobby or something enjoyable? Remember how you used to love gardening? Do you still do that?"
"I still do a bit of gardening at home. Maybe I should take this time to relearn about different types of flowers and their planting methods."
These days, many people post their gardening pictures on social media, which is fun to look at and can be inspiring. Let me see your phone, I'll install the app for you.
After saying that, she installed a social media app on my phone. Indeed, there were many beautiful gardening images, and I found them educational. I was impressed that young people nowadays use such convenient and enjoyable things. From that day, I started browsing various posts whenever I had time. Not just gardening, but I also began searching for information on local botanical gardens and nice cafes. One day, I came across a post that caught my eye. It was about a new Italian restaurant in our neighborhood, which I had wanted to visit. But David had said,
"Don't waste my hard-earned money on frivolous things."
So, I wasn't allowed to go out to eat. The post showed a man and a woman dining together, perhaps on a date. They weren't showing their faces, just their hands, a high-end brand purse, and the keys of a luxury car. However, the purse and the style of the nails on the woman's hand seemed similar to Nancy's. And the man's hand didn't seem like Anthony's. It bothered me a little, but it was just a post on social media with no solid proof, so I was confused and didn't know what to do. When I consulted Susan about this, "Got it, I'll look into it a bit," she said. Recently, Anthony and his wife announced they were building a new house. It seems to be a stylish house, heavily influenced by Nancy's preferences.
Nancy keeps adding options, and the initial estimate is now a joke. She insists on a top-tier housemaker. But I can't say no when Nancy asks.
Anthony was in a good mood.
"Well, I wanted our house to be nicer than this one." "That's okay, right?" Anthony has no choice but to listen when a cute wife like Nancy asks for something. I wish Nancy would ask me for something. "Oh, really? I wonder what I should ask for."
My presence being ignored, the three of them were excitedly having fun together. Thinking that a loan beyond one's means would only lead to future hardships, I considered sending some cash as a housewarming gift from us, and looked at the drawer with my debit card inside. To my surprise, the debit card containing the $300,000 insurance money left to me by my late husband William was missing. I immediately confronted David about it.
The debit card with the $300,000 insurance money from my late husband William is missing. What did you do with it? Where did you put it?
Then David said,
That money is for Nancy's housewarming. Since it's thanks to me that you have been able to live up till now, that money is mine, right? If you have a problem with that, we can just get a divorce, okay?
Saying this, David flaunted the divorce papers in front of me. That money was precious, left to me by William. Of course, I never intended to use it alone. It was meant to eventually rebuild this old house into a small single-story home where I could spend my twilight years with David. Anthony and Nancy looked at me with malicious grins.
That's right, Jennifer. Wait, you remarried? Then you should be more grateful to David. Did William die of an illness? How sad. But money is useless to someone who's dead. We'll make sure to use it properly in his place. I took you in, Jennifer, even when you had a marriage history. I would appreciate a bit of gratitude. Besides, William died a long time ago. He's none of our concern. Wouldn't William be happier if lovely Nancy used the money more effectively than you, Jennifer?
Facing David's nasty grin, I felt my affection for him cooling. Even though David was arrogant and looked down on me, I endured it because I thought he had accepted me and my late husband William, since it wasn't my first marriage.
David, didn't you tell me not to worry about not being in my first marriage when we got married?
Were those words a lie?
Huh? That was just because I thought someone who felt inferior would be easier to manipulate. And it turned out to be true. Mom seemed to be tough on you because of that, but I couldn't care less.
I was foolish. I had completely misunderstood. As a last hope, I turned to Anthony.
Anthony, I raised you with love in my own way. Do you understand my sadness?
What do you think, Anthony?
I don't understand your feelings. As long as I have Nancy and money, that's all I need. So, you're giving me the money, right? As a parent, you should do anything for my happiness, right? Fulfill your responsibility.
This was truly a shock. Regarding Anthony, I realized it was my responsibility for raising him this way. A feeling of guilt overwhelmed me. However, now that things have come to this, I resolved to focus on protecting myself.
Understood. Then, let's get a divorce. Thank you for everything.
I said emotionlessly, with a voice surprisingly low, even to myself. David, expecting me to cry and cling to him, looked a bit surprised at first. But then his expression changed to one of pity as he said, "You sure about this? Think hard, okay?" He said, and tossed the divorce papers at me. Anthony and Nancy were distorting their mouths in laughter. They all seemed like aliens to me. How much do they need to belittle others to be satisfied? As I quickly packed my things, I contemplated the future. Once I left the house, I immediately submitted the completed divorce papers to the courthouse. Now we would soon be officially divorced. I rented an apartment a little away from Susan's family's house and started living alone. I didn't persistently pursue David because I had a plan. One day, Anthony called, informing me that David had been arrested for theft. It was natural for suspicion to arise when someone, now a stranger, tried to withdraw $300,000 from a bank account under my name. At the police station, David claimed,
"I supported Jennifer for years, so her things are mine. What's wrong with me withdrawing this money?"
But such a claim wouldn't hold up. Despite his personality, I thought he was a calm and capable person, but his way of thinking had become so twisted. I felt embarrassed to have spent all these years married to such a man. Anthony seemed to think that if I spoke well of David to the police, his punishment could be lessened. Why would he think I would help lessen David's sentence?
"I'm divorced now, it's none of my concern.
Don't contact me." I hung up the phone. Later investigations revealed that David had been embezzling company funds, leading to his dismissal. This was surprising. Was there a reason he needed money so desperately to commit such a crime? It felt like there were still facts I didn't know. Around the same time as David's arrest, Susan contacted me. She had been investigating the social media account I was curious about. The posts I had previously seen were carefully made without showing faces, but some revealed reflections in mirrors or easily identifiable locations. It was indeed Nancy. Selling personal information for likes, I was appalled by her lack of crisis management skills. Her need for validation was indeed ingrained. Among the posts were some that slandered or defamed others. There were also posts suggesting personal relationships with several people, hinting at infidelity. Susan presented this evidence to Anthony. Anthony, furious, confronted Nancy, but she brazenly responded, "If you have a problem, we can just get divorced, okay?" Showing defiance. Perhaps due to his infatuation, Anthony couldn't bring himself to divorce her. However, it was problematic since some of the men involved had families or held significant positions at work. Moreover, Nancy received a stern warning from her workplace regarding her defamatory posts on social media, making it difficult for her to stay at the company, leading to her resignation. Such actions were typical of Nancy, known for her excessive pride. Well, all of this no longer concerns me. Several months later, I received a call from David. I didn't want to answer, but after several calls, I decided to pick up.
How many times do you think I've called you? Well, never mind. The house is filthy now. No one does any housework. It's like a garbage dump. Jennifer, come and clean it up.
Huh? Who are you?
What?
It's you, David.
Your voice has become so old I couldn't recognize you.
Now, what were you saying?
I said come and clean the house. Can't you understand?
Why should I, now a stranger, clean your house?
What's with that arrogant tone? You and I were married, so you're also responsible for the house I'm living in.
I have no responsibility. How about doing it yourself? Housework is a simple task, isn't it? I blurted it out, recalling something I had been told in the past.
A man doing housework? I've told you so many times that housework is a woman's job. You're so stupid.
Then how about asking your beloved Nancy? Isn't she currently unemployed, a moocher and a nuisance as you once said? I found myself repeating things I had been told in the past.
I can't possibly ask Nancy to do such things.
I knew that Nancy wasn't capable of housework, but it seemed David was also afraid of being disliked by Nancy, so he couldn't bring himself to ask her for help.
Look, David. You and I are divorced, so we're no longer husband and wife. I have no obligation or responsibility to clean your house. Understand? If you contact me again, I'll consult a lawyer.
After hearing this, David hastily hung up the phone. Several days later, I received another call from David. Hey, I'm sorry. Please come back. I'm in trouble because I have no money. Wait, that's it? I'll remarry you. That should work, right? If we remarry, you'll have the responsibility to take care of me, right? This will settle everything. Now, hurry up and do the housework and cook for me.
Ugh. Why do you think I would be happy to get back together with you and take care of you?
I refuse.
Absolutely not. If you keep bothering me like this, I will call the police.
I really hope this is the last time he contacts me. It turns out David had been trying to please Nancy by showering her with gifts. Purses, earrings and other accessories, and even the down payment for a luxury car. That's why he embezzled money from his company. Nancy was aware of David's ulterior motives and exploited them fully. Despite everything being exposed, I still can't understand why David and Anthony can't detach themselves from Nancy. One day, Susan said, "Maybe Nancy is what they call a community crusher?" After some research, I found out that this refers to someone who destroys interpersonal relationships within communities like company organizations, university clubs, mom-friend groups, or neighborhood associations. Characteristics include a distorted need for approval, being aggressive and critical towards others. While I'm not sure if Nancy fits the description perfectly, there seem to be many similarities. But as for me, all I can do now is to live my life without any involvement with Nancy and her ilk. Now, they're known in the neighborhood as a problematic family living in a famous garbage house, constantly arguing with each other. Given Nancy's extravagant tastes, the monthly mortgage on the garbage house is apparently quite high. It's said they're falling behind on the payments and will likely lose their home to foreclosure soon. As for me, I'm living alone peacefully in an apartment near Susan's house. I've improved a lot at gardening on my balcony, thanks to learning from social media. I sometimes do part-time jobs in gardening at local parks or botanical gardens, and also participate in volunteering. One of my joys is occasionally babysitting my grandchild and having meals with Susan's family. Susan's husband is a gentle person and is kind to me. I'm very grateful. Looking back, perhaps my late husband William helped expose the true nature of David and Nancy. This experience made me reflect on how I always felt inferior and never took action before. As a result, I've been hurt, and more importantly, I made Susan suffer for a long time. If I'm this hurt, Susan, who was just a child then, must have suffered even more. I also feel sorry for Anthony. From now on, I plan to think for myself and associate with people who value me and whom I value. It's never too late to start. My life is surely just beginning.